We're 13 since my dad died this year, and we've been, this has all been in my head with dad,
It is regrettable that more than 2 decades have passed before we learn the truth about George Harrison's tragic life through the words of his son. It turns out that Harrison endured being undervalued for his musical prowess and mistreated by those closest to him, including the loss of his wife amidst these strained relationships. Not only that, his interactions with family were reportedly toxic, profoundly impacting his mental and physical well-being. Clearly, throughout his life, Harrison faced relentless tragedies. This video promises to uncover many more startling revelations about George Harrison. Let's begin. During George Harrison's life, the relationship between him and his two close friends, Paul McCartney and John Lennon, was of concern to many fans. Amidst the negative rumors about this trio, George Harrison's son candidly revealed his father's true feelings about them. He admitted that his father once hated Paul McCartney, but their friendship remained strong even after his death. There is a truth that despite his contributions to the Beatles' sound, Harrison often found himself overshadowed in the songwriting department. It wasn't until the Beatles decided to disband in 1970 that Harrison was able to fully express himself musically through his solo work, notably with his landmark album, All Things Must Pass. The title itself reflected Harrison's philosophical outlook on life and the changes within the band. Bob Dylan's observation, as shared with Rolling Stone via NME, underscored the sentiment that Harrison's talent and songwriting potential could have flourished even more prominently had he been in a different musical environment. Harrison's frustration with his role in the Beatles was evident, and his solo efforts following the band's breakup allowed him to explore his own musical identity more freely. The dynamic between Harrison and McCartney, despite their shared history and musical collaboration, also had its share of tensions post-Beatles. Harrison's dissatisfaction with McCartney's approach and decisions within the Beatles led him to express his feelings through music, such as in the song Run of the Mill, which addressed some of these issues indirectly. In the aftermath of the Beatles' breakup, each member pursued a solo career, with occasional collaborations and reunions over the years. The relationship between Harrison, McCartney, and Ringo Starr evolved as they navigated their individual paths in music and life. Despite past conflicts, there were moments of reconciliation and camaraderie, such as the brief reunion at Harrison's home in 1994, where they revisited their early Beatles repertoire. Harrison's passing in 2001 marked a poignant moment for his surviving bandmates, particularly Paul McCartney, who reflected on their friendship and shared experiences. The symbolic gesture of a tree planted by Harrison, gifted to McCartney, encapsulated their enduring bond and Harrison's lasting influence on McCartney's life. McCartney's heartfelt acknowledgement of the tree as a living memorial to Harrison in a 2020 interview with NPR illustrated the depth of their friendship and the enduring impact of their time together in the Beatles. George Harrison was furious over John Lennon's violent death. This is what his son revealed. According to his wife, Olivia, Harrison was deeply affected by Lennon's sudden passing, expressing anger over the circumstances surrounding it. Olivia recounted in the documentary George Harrison, Living in the Material World, that her husband felt a strong sense of injustice, that Lennon hadn't had the opportunity to depart life in a more peaceful manner. For Harrison, the moment of death held immense significance, reflecting his spiritual journey and beliefs. Central to Harrison's worldview was his deep immersion in Hinduism, a faith he embraced fervently after a transformative visit to India. He found solace and enlightenment in Hindu teachings, which guided his perspective on life, death, and the afterlife. Olivia Harrison highlighted that George practiced methods aimed at preparing for the eventual departure from his physical body, viewing death as a natural transition rather than an end. Harrison's spiritual quest wasn't just philosophical, it also manifested in his musical pursuits. His fascination with Indian culture extended to its music, particularly the sitar. Under the guidance of Maestro Ravi Shankar, Harrison immersed himself in learning the intricacies of Indian classical music. This newfound passion profoundly influenced his musical contributions to the Beatles, notably enriching tracks like Norwegian Wood with Eastern musical motifs. Professional relationship, Harrison and Lennon shared a bond that transcended the band's dissolution. In their final meeting in 1978, Harrison discovered a treasure trove of Indian music tapes at Lennon's home, symbolizing their shared appreciation for Eastern culture and music. This unexpected connection underscored the enduring camaraderie and mutual respect they had cultivated over the years. As Harrison navigated the tumultuous emotions following Lennon's sudden death in 1980, his belief in the continuity of the soul provided solace and a framework for understanding the transient nature of life. In a poignant TV interview during the 1980s, Harrison drew upon teachings from the Bhagavad Gita, a revered Hindu scripture, to articulate his views on life, death, and the eternal soul. He expressed a belief in the perpetual existence of the soul, stating, "There was never a time when you didn't exist, and will never be a time when you cease to exist." This perspective allowed Harrison to feel Lennon's presence even after his physical departure, remarking that he sensed Lennon's spirit around here in the TV studio. Despite initially grappling with anger over Lennon's abrupt passing, Harrison's evolving spiritual outlook provided a transformative lens through which to process grief. He emphasized the importance of consciously leaving one's body at death, echoing principles central to his Hindu faith. Reflecting on Lennon's transition, Harrison conveyed a sense of reassurance, affirming, "He's okay, and life flows within you and without you," referencing the interconnectedness of all life. Throughout his life, Harrison remained steadfast in his devotion to spiritual pursuits. His son, Donnie, discovered a profound letter written by Harrison at the age of 24, during the height of Beatlemania, where he articulated a deep yearning for spiritual fulfillment over material success. This early declaration underscored Harrison's unwavering commitment to seeking spiritual truth amidst the whirlwind of fame and acclaim. On the 41st anniversary of Lennon's passing, George Harrison's estate commemorated his enduring friendship with Lennon by highlighting his profound spiritual insights. They honored Lennon's memory with a poignant message emphasizing Harrison's belief that life transcends the material world, viewing existence as a fleeting play in the grander cosmic drama. This commemoration reflected Harrison's profound philosophical evolution, moving beyond initial emotions of anger to embrace a deeper understanding of life's spiritual dimensions. In addition to the tense relationship between George Harrison and his two close friends, George Harrison also harbors a family secret. Maybe you don't know, Eric Clapton had a crush on George Harrison's wife. This was confirmed by his own son. The marriage between George Harrison and Pattie Boyd, once seen as a union of two cultural icons, ultimately unraveled amid a tumultuous mix of personal struggles, infidelity, and shifting affections. Their relationship, which began in 1966 amidst the frenzy of Beatlemania, faced significant challenges as Harrison grappled with issues related to drug use and infidelity. Among the most devastating betrayals was Harrison's affair with Maureen Starkey, the wife of his bandmate Ringo Starr, which further strained his marriage to Boyd. However, the dissolution of their marriage was not solely attributable to Harrison's actions. Boyd herself became entangled in a passionate love affair that would reverberate through music history. She fell deeply in love with Eric Clapton, a close friend of Harrison's and a renowned musician in his own right. Clapton's infatuation with Boyd was profound, inspiring him to pen his iconic song, Layla, a poignant anthem of unrequited love about his feelings for her. The emotional turmoil between Harrison, Boyd, and Clapton became a public fascination, encapsulating the complexities of love and loyalty amidst fame and personal desires. Boyd's feelings were torn between her loyalty to Harrison and her undeniable connection with Clapton. She recounted the tension she felt upon hearing Layla, knowing it was a testament to Clapton's feelings for her, even while she remained married to Harrison. The strain eventually led to the end of her marriage to Harrison in 1977, and she married Clapton 2 years later in 1979. Yet, Boyd's marriage to Clapton was not without its own challenges. Despite their initial bond, Clapton's struggles with fidelity surfaced, leading to their separation in 1988. Reflecting on the complexities of their intertwined relationships, Clapton later expressed that his friendship with Harrison remained intact despite the romantic entanglements. Harrison himself, known for his introspective and philosophical outlook, was reportedly accepting of Boyd's relationship with Clapton, once remarking, "I'd rather she be with him than some dope." When mentioning George Harrison's career, his son revealed his difficulties that no one could imagine. During their years as a group, George Harrison was often ignored by producer George Martin. Despite his undeniable talent, Harrison often found himself relegated to a secondary position when it came to songwriting opportunities within the group. Throughout the Beatles' tenure, Harrison's contributions were frequently limited to just 1 or 2 songs per album. This disparity was exacerbated by the band's longtime producer George Martin, who admittedly focused more on the Lennon-McCartney partnership, often overlooking Harrison's potential. Martin acknowledged this imbalance in a documentary about Harrison, admitting that in the early days, Harrison's compositions were sometimes seen as filler compared to the hits churned out by Lennon and McCartney. Reflecting on Harrison's early struggles within the band, Martin expressed regret over the dismissive attitude towards Harrison's work. He admitted that there was a perception that Harrison's songs were tolerated rather than celebrated, with a sentiment of, well, it's not as good as the others, but we'll include it anyway. Despite these challenges, Harrison's songwriting abilities continued to evolve and mature over the years. By 1969, with the release of Abbey Road, Harrison had established himself as a formidable composer within the Beatles. His composition, Something, was not only included on the album but also received high praise from none other than John Lennon himself, who famously called it the best track on the album. This recognition marked a significant turning point for Harrison, affirming his growing influence and stature within the band. Beyond his contributions as a songwriter, Harrison's musical talents extended into areas such as lead guitar, where his distinctive style and melodic sensibilities enriched many Beatles classics. His interest in Indian music, fostered by his study of the sitar under Ravi Shankar, added a unique dimension to the band's sound, as evident in songs like Norwegian Wood and Within You Without You. Then, George Harrison's transition from being the third option in the Beatles to a solo artist liberated his creative spirit and unleashed a torrent of music that had been suppressed during his years with the band. The culmination of this newfound freedom was his groundbreaking 1970 triple album, All Things Must Pass, a magnum opus that solidified Harrison's stature as a formidable solo artist. All Things Must Pass was a revelation, showcasing Harrison's pent-up songwriting prowess and emotional depth. Many of the album's tracks, including Isn't It a Pity and Let It Down, had been previously overlooked and rejected by his former bandmates, Paul McCartney and John Lennon. Harrison seized the opportunity to finally bring these songs to light, imbuing them with a sense of personal liberation and artistic fulfillment. Among the standout tracks on the album was My Sweet Lord, a spiritual anthem that resonated deeply with listeners worldwide. Inspired by the gospel hymn Oh Happy Day and influenced by the rendition by the Edwin Hawkins Singers, Harrison composed My Sweet Lord in December 1969. Initially intended for his friend Billy Preston, Harrison eventually recorded the definitive version himself, releasing it as a single in 1970. Despite its massive success, My Sweet Lord became entangled in a legal dispute that marred its initial triumph. In February 1971, Bright Tunes Music filed a lawsuit against Harrison, alleging that My Sweet Lord plagiarized their song He's So Fine by the Chiffons. The legal battle dragged on for years, casting a shadow over Harrison's joyous musical achievement. Finally, in 1976, a judge ruled that Harrison had subconsciously copied the melody of He's So Fine and awarded the lawsuit in favor of Bright Tunes Music. The decision was a bitter pill for Harrison, reflecting the challenges that often accompanied his pursuit of artistic expression and recognition. In addition, George Harrison's foray into film production with Monty Python's Life of Brian marked a significant chapter in his post-Beatles career, showcasing his influence beyond the realm of music. Harrison's affinity for the irreverent humor of Monty Python led to a deep friendship with the group, known for their groundbreaking comedy that redefined the genre and inspired generations of comedians worldwide. In the late 1970s, when Monty Python faced difficulties securing funding for their controversial satire on religion, Life of Brian, Harrison stepped in as a pivotal figure. Despite initial reluctance from established production companies due to the film's sensitive subject matter, Python member Eric Idle turned to Harrison for support. After reviewing the script and consulting with his business manager, Harrison took a bold leap, establishing Handmade Films and personally financing the production by remortgaging his home. Life of Brian premiered in 1979 to critical acclaim and commercial success, becoming a cultural phenomenon that resonated with audiences despite early controversies. Harrison's faith in the project paid off, not only securing Python's place in cinematic history, but also establishing Handmade Films as a prominent force in British cinema throughout the 1980s. Handmade Films quickly gained a reputation for producing distinctive and memorable movies that showcased British talent both in front of and behind the camera. Films like The Long Good Friday, starring Bob Hoskins, and The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover, featuring Helen Mirren, solidified Handmade's role in shaping the British film industry. Throughout its peak years, Handmade Films continued to nurture the careers of emerging actors and directors, including Richard E. Grant and Paul McGann, providing them with opportunities to shine in critically acclaimed productions. However, by the late 1980s, Handmade Films faced financial challenges and mounting debts that threatened its existence. As the company struggled with declining box office numbers and costly productions, it found itself on the brink of bankruptcy by the early 1990s. The unraveling of Handmade Films culminated in legal battles and financial disputes, notably a lawsuit filed by Harrison against his business partner Dennis O'Brien. Harrison alleged fraud and negligence, resulting in a legal victory that awarded him $11 million in damages. This tumultuous period marked the end of Handmade Films as a powerhouse in British cinema, signaling the conclusion of Harrison's ambitious venture into film production. You might not know this. George Harrison's life after the Beatles was marked by a series of deeply traumatic events that underscored his growing wariness of public attention and his desire for privacy. The stress brought on by the overwhelming phenomenon of Beatlemania, combined with the tragic murder of his close friend and bandmate John Lennon in 1980, had already heightened Harrison's concerns about his personal safety and security. However, the most harrowing incident occurred on the night of December 30th, 1999, when Harrison and his second wife, Olivia, faced a terrifying intrusion into their home. Michael Abrams, a 33-year-old intruder, broke into their mansion in Henley-on-Thames, England. According to reports from Ultimate Classic Rock, Harrison confronted Abrams in an attempt to subdue him, but Abrams retaliated by stabbing Harrison in the chest with a knife. Olivia, acting quickly and bravely, intervened by hitting Abrams with a lamp, ultimately saving her husband's life. The attack left Harrison with severe injuries, including near-fatal wounds to his chest. The incident bore eerie similarities to the murder of John Lennon, perpetuated by a deranged fan driven by delusions. In Abrams's case, he claimed to be acting on wild thoughts, echoing the tragic circumstances that had taken Lennon's life nearly 2 decades earlier. Legal proceedings followed, with Abrams ultimately being found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was committed to a mental hospital for treatment, highlighting the complexities and challenges of dealing with individuals suffering from severe mental illness in the criminal justice system. In the aftermath of the attack, George Harrison displayed remarkable resilience and humor when addressing the press. He famously quipped that Abrams wasn't a burglar, and he certainly wasn't auditioning for the Traveling Wilburys, referencing the supergroup Harrison had formed with Bob Dylan, Roy Orbison, Tom Petty, and Jeff Lynne. Despite his resilience, the physical and emotional toll of the attack was profound for Harrison. Danny Harrison, their son, later reflected that the incident definitely took years off his life, compounded by George Harrison's ongoing battle with throat cancer at the same time. On the family front, George Harrison's son has opened up about his toxic relationship with his sister. George Harrison's relationship with his older sister, Louise Harrison, spanned a lifetime filled with both deep affection and occasional strains, reflecting the complexities of family dynamics amidst the backdrop of fame and fortune. Louise Harrison played a pivotal role in George's early life, especially during his formative years before the Beatles' meteoric rise to fame. She had settled in the United States with her American husband, and it was George who made the initial journey across the Atlantic to visit them in Illinois, a significant event that preceded the Beatles' historic debut on The Ed Sullivan Show by 6 months. Throughout their lives, George maintained a close bond with Louise, demonstrating his care and concern through financial support. Starting in 1980, George provided Louise with a monthly stipend of $2,000, a gesture intended to alleviate financial hardships exacerbated by her 2 failed marriages, both of which involved husbands struggling with alcoholism. George's directive to Louise, advising her against remarrying, underscored his desire to shield her from further personal and financial turmoil. However, tensions arose in the 1990s when Louise decided to convert the home where George had once stayed into a Beatles-themed bed and breakfast. This entrepreneurial venture, while seen by Louise as a way to honor her brother's legacy, caused George considerable discomfort. He felt uneasy about what he perceived as commercializing his Beatles image, despite Louise's insistence that she never intended to exploit their family connection for profit. Despite these disagreements, the siblings reconciled in the final years of George's life, particularly during his battle with cancer. Their reconciliation was a poignant moment of healing, bridging any lingering divides and reaffirming their enduring familial bond. Tragically, George Harrison passed away in 2001, and with his death, the financial support he had provided to Louise ceased. This change in circumstances was part of the complex aftermath of George's estate management and reflected practical considerations rather than any personal estrangement. In the years following George's passing, Louise Harrison maintained connections within the Beatles community, including a reportedly closer relationship with George's first wife, Pattie Boyd, than with his second wife, Olivia Arias. This dynamic illustrates the intricate web of relationships that surrounded George Harrison throughout his life, shaped by love, loyalty, and the challenges of navigating fame and family ties. Speaking of which, are you asking questions about George Harrison's death? It is a heartbreaking reality that George Harrison's final years were marked by a brave and dignified battle against the ravages of cancer, a stark contrast to the sudden and tragic death of his bandmate John Lennon. Harrison's health challenges were compounded by a lifelong habit of smoking, which he himself acknowledged as a contributing factor to his illness. The first indication of George Harrison's health struggles came in 1997 when he was diagnosed with throat cancer. He underwent intensive treatment, initially responding well. However, the respite was brief, as in May 2001, Harrison faced a new and daunting diagnosis: lung cancer. This necessitated further treatment, prompting Harrison to seek medical care at the renowned Mayo Clinic. Despite his unwavering determination to fight the disease, Harrison's health continued to decline. 2 months after his lung cancer diagnosis, he underwent radiotherapy for a brain tumor in Switzerland, underscoring the severity and spread of his illness. In his final months, George Harrison remained remarkably spirited and maintained his trademark sense of humor, even as he confronted the gravest of circumstances. A poignant example of his resilience was captured in his last conversation with Ringo Starr, his fellow Beatle and close friend. As Starr prepared to depart for Los Angeles, where his daughter was undergoing brain surgery, Harrison, lying in bed and facing his own battle with brain cancer, quipped, "Do you want me to come with you?" This exchange highlighted Harrison's enduring wit and camaraderie, even in the face of imminent mortality. George Harrison passed away on November 29, 2001, in Los Angeles, surrounded by loved ones who cherished his bravery and indomitable spirit throughout his illness. The news of his death reverberated across the globe, prompting an outpouring of grief from fans, friends, and fellow musicians. Paul McCartney, deeply affected by Harrison's passing, eloquently summed up his feelings, describing Harrison as a lovely guy and a very brave man who possessed a wonderful sense of humor. McCartney's poignant tribute underscored the profound bond shared among the Beatles, likening Harrison to a beloved younger brother whose loss left an irreplaceable void in his heart. What do you think about the tragedies that George Harrison went through? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.